Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Voices of Max for the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Today, we're focusing on gender equality in EU-funded research with a particular look at management, policy, and real-world practice. I'm joined today by Luisa Neri. Luisa is a technologist at CNR-Nano and work package leader of Max Management. Luisa works closely with EU-funded projects and research consortia, and she's involved in several initiatives that aim to promote gender equality in science and academia. Luisa, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, Marina. Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me.
Luisa, gender equality is now a recurring theme in European research calls. From your perspective within Max Management, how has the topic of gender equality changed in EU-funded research projects? Is it still perceived as an extra requirement, or is it seen as a pillar for better science?
Well, luckily, the EU has shown interest in equality since its beginning, starting from calls for equal pay to equal opportunities and treatment of men and women in employment, up to the definition of gender mainstreaming, which requires the integration of equity into all areas of EU policy and legislation. The European Commission drafted the gender equality strategy from 2020 to 2025, and then adopted the roadmap for women's rights in 2025 that aims to uphold and advance women's rights and to address new gender equality challenges, such as those related to technology, discrimination, and violence. So to the Commission, it came naturally to involve gender in such an important political instrument as Horizon Europe is. And their gender interest goes far beyond increasing the number of women in research, which is nonetheless a noble aim, but put it at the core of science. Casting the light on gender-sensitive research definitely helps improve science as it enlarges the gaze and the knowledge on our world, acknowledging differences and features.
Yeah, true. It is not only a matter of number of women in research, but also many projects now include gender equality plans or the inclusion of gender dimension in the proposals, in the deliverables. From a management point of view, how these gender-related requirements influence how a project is run or how decisions are made?
Oh, you see, I think including gender dimension is highly challenging for many scientific fields, and it makes you think out of the box. Gender equality plans drive the change for a whole institution, while framing one's research in a gender dimension perspective requires a lot of effort at the project's level. So, starting from the project to the implementation, you always need to pay attention to this aspect, planning actions, raising awareness in and outside your consortium, and sometimes also being a little bit pushy if needed.
Okay, you say pushy, and now I'm curious about this. Have you seen any concrete practices, either within Max or in other EU-funded projects, that genuinely support gender equality and inclusion rather than simply ticking a box? Like even something small but eventually effective.
Well, the most important practice of all to me is to speak up about these issues. You don't need to be shy or get bored to show data, to raise questions, to bring up the topic. Many times, people, even researchers, are just used to the status quo, and showing the impact a higher number of women in research can have, I mean, in terms of knowledge, expertise, and workforce, is essential. This communication effort can be done in many ways. In Max, for example, we promote several social media campaigns to make our women scientists more visible. We try to enlarge the pool of lecturers in our training events, Or we organize dissemination events such as conferences on the topic.
Yeah, totally. In Max, we carry out many activities in this sense. Gender balance is often discussed in terms of participation and inclusion, but leadership is another layer. How important it is for women to be present not just as researchers, but also in leadership, coordination, and management roles within the European Research Consortia.
Oh, well, having women in leadership roles is key for a true change. First, as they serve as an example for younger scientists to see that a career in science is possible. Second, they often act as mentors, for they have faced the same difficulties.
Mm.
Third, they usually foster inclusive policies or rules and so help close the divide. Max has been coordinated by a prominent female scientist for 10 years so far, Professor Luisa Molinari, and she is a pioneer activist for women in research. And she has definitely inspired us in our actions, such as, for example, promoting inclusive policies and giving visibility to female scientists.
Yeah, I just jump in because you mentioned inclusive policies. We know that at the European level, inclusion is truly a policy language. In your experience, what is the biggest gap between the European policy intentions on gender equality and the day-to-day reality in research?
Hmm. If I may say, I see two gaps. One is work-life balance. You see, we have a high number of female students, PhD students, or even early stage researchers that does not reflect the number of researchers at higher stages in their careers. It is still difficult to grow a family and to keep up with the work needs. It is easy to be left apart. The second gap, which I feel is narrowing, is that top level and mainly higher age or male people in research were not so aware of the gender inequity. Now I see that thanks to policies, to public discourse, things are slowly changing in a positive way, and awareness is slowly changing the landscape.
Yeah, it's good that these policies and top-down measures are in place, likely, as we can already see that they're starting to have an impact. And speaking of impact, we know that progress, success is often evaluated in terms of indicators and reporting. And when it comes to gender equality in European projects, what should we be really measuring? Which indicators reflect meaningful progress and which ones are maybe misleading?
In general, it would be great to see the number of female scientists grow year by year, but it's a slow growth. In the HPC field, where Max lies, participation figures are low. Studies show that women constitute only about 7 to 17, 10, sorry, to 17% of the workforce. So, on a real basis, I would say indicators would be the number of female trainers and teachers, the number of women in boards, from work program leaders to advisory board members, for example, the number of events with spokeswomen. Aiming at growing indicators can help us build effective strategies, but we must pay check to reality. On the other hand, we cannot measure it, but we must aim at growing awareness, at making the pursuit of equity a common effort, at building a pleasant and attracting workplace at large for young researchers. At large, I mean for women and for many people more.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luisa, we are almost at the end of our conversation. And I truly appreciate you taking the time to join us today, the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. This day is also about looking ahead. If we look 5 to 10 years into the future, what would success look like for you in terms of gender equality in research? What would make you feel that real progress has been made?
Hmm. Is it too easy to say that it would be great if we could look back and find gender equality policies outdated as we don't need them anymore? It is. In STEM, data and computing fields, there will be soon a shortage of workforce. Building an equal system that takes care of family burden, access to leadership, safe workplaces is then essential.
Mm.
We need to change the mindset and to broaden the gaze. Scientists from so-called minorities are highly needed. And besides, I would like to see the full development of gender sensitive research, taking into account gender and diversity dimension into research from cradle to results would drive a societal change and probably lead to a deep transformation in this position. I hope in 10 years we will not need to explain why we deserve a place in research anymore, as it would be natural to give us room.
Yeah, I hope it too, Luisa. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Luisa.
Thanks to you for raising the topic.
Yeah, and thanks to all of our listeners for joining us on this special edition of Voices of Max for the International Day of Women and Girls in Science.